It is Robinson who's in the slot. Look in that direction on a slant. Huge hit. Ball picked off. The Volunteers of the Carib make an interception. Jawan Mitchell. They call him Juju.
The discrepancy. Schuster, they were going to take a shot, but he's hit by Nelson. And Nebraska has picked up the football. Their first takeaway of the game.
Wells way down the field. It is into coverage. It is intercepted. It is over. Lamarian James has sealed the victory for Old Dominion. And fittingly, it comes on a takeaway.
Welcome back to Devy IDP Grind. I am Hollywood, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. What's going on, man?
Well, not much. Just watching some racing on a Saturday night.
Watching some racing? I figured you'd be watching some kind of football.
Nah, dirt track racing.
Mm-hmm. You know, I watch it every once in a while. We used to have a local one, probably like 20 miles from us.
Yeah.
And it was a great, back in the day, that thing on Saturday night, if you didn't get there early, you weren't getting in. That place was packed. But I think with all the recent cost and some of that stuff nowadays, I don't even know if that track is still open or not. But yeah, that was some major fun on a Saturday night.
Oh yeah, the ones I go to, they're pretty busy. Like $20, so not a bad deal at all.
Yeah, they don't usually cost a whole lot to get in. These local ones don't. But enough of that. We're back. Episode 67. We're starting our conference previews, if you will, and we're going to do the SEC East this week. Not a lot of news and notes. Me and you kind of looked at that, other than some recruiting. I was going to put some of that stuff in to talk about, and I think rather than bore everybody with recruiting week after week, I'll just do it every couple of weeks and maybe hit some of the more high-profile guys that everybody kind of know, where their decisions to go to school and stuff like that are. So, and then
the thing is now it's just verbal, right? Like, so it could change 20 times.
True, but it's still, kind of tracking your school or tracking some of where the high profilers go. And I figure it's the same way with the portal, right? Instead of doing that every week, we'll just kind of every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll kind of throw some of the bigger names or something in there like that. But so for the news and notes,
I was going to say the one commitment maybe we should mention, because I feel like it's probably going to stick, is Sammy Brown.
Yeah, I was hoping you would not mention that. Because it really pisses me off. But, yeah.
Is he the number one linebacker in this class? I don't know.
Yeah, he is. He was. The last time I looked, he was, like last week. So Tennessee was in it for a while. Oklahoma was as well. And he decided he wants to play for Clemson. So I hope maybe we can flip him somehow.
I feel like once people commit to Clemson, you don't really see him flip that much, because number one, if he was to go on a visit somewhere else, he's done, right? I mean, I think Clemson's made that pretty clear. Like, once you commit to us, then you are committed, and you're not taking visits other places. And so, if he was to visit some other place, then if they're, I would think they're going to say, well, he ain't coming to Clemson now. So,
right. And let's face it, he's got a pretty easy path in Clemson, right? He's got Trotter and Barrett in front of him, really.
Well,
everybody else
they're probably both gone after this year, right? So,
exactly, they're both gone, and the rest that's left are kind of young and inexperienced. So, if he's as good as he projects to be, he should
better than they are.
Yep, I agree. But yeah, that was a tough loss. I think Tennessee was in it for him for a while. Just listening to some of the local stuff, when he come to town, he had a good time. Really impressed with what they got from him. He was really impressed with this, but maybe it come down to NIL money. Maybe Clemson forked over a few more dollars. So I mean, that's crazy to say, but that's the reality of amateur sports now, right? It's not so much amateur anymore. Your amateur is high school now because your college kids are getting paid, one way or another somehow, especially if they're good. If they're stars, they're getting paid every which way. So, but yeah, it was a tough loss for him. I was hoping we could have used him, but yeah, Clemson lucked out on that one. And you're right. You don't see very many people leaving Clemson very often. So, what DJ Uiagalelei was the last one, right? And I think that the writing was on the wall because they gave him every opportunity to run away with that job, and he just couldn't quite seize it. So
Yeah.
I think those are the only instances you see maybe a player leave Clemson most of the time.
I mean, you see it every now and then, right? You saw the was it a linebacker that went to LSU not a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, it doesn't happen very often. And they don't take in a lot of transfers either. So,
which is weird. I would think they would be a school that would be in. I'm not saying open the door and let everybody in, right? But you would think Clemson is kind of a team that would kind of cherry pick off the portal. If you see a good player, but they don't do that.
No, I feel like I don't know. Maybe that Dabo feels like, hey, he feels. I don't know if obligated is the right word, but he feels like it'd be a disservice to his the kids he's recruiting if he does that. That's my guess. He has never said that. I've never read that, but that's just kind of a guess on my part. Like, I mean, even like Stanford doesn't take transfers very often either, right? But there's a reason for that, and it's all academics.
Right.
Clemson, it's got to be a Dabo thing.
Yeah, I think he's pretty tight on his stuff like that, like recruiting and transfer portal. Like you said, if you come in here, if you commit to us, you're not going anywhere else, right? You're not looking at school A or school B. You're done. You're telling us 100% you're ours, and we're going to commit to you. So yeah, I kind of see that. Outside of that, there wasn't a lot of news. Bubba Arzalanian from Akron is done with college football.
Yeah, he had another year.
Seventh year, was that right? 7th year?
Well, he would have had it was his 7th year, but he had a year of eligibility left.
That's crazy. That is crazy. I'm sure there's medical red shirts and the COVID year and all that involved in that, but 7 years is insane.
Yeah, his post on Twitter says, "I will not be returning to the University of Akron and will be pursuing a career at the professional level." So I'm sure he's probably going to enter the NFL supplemental draft. My guess is he ain't going to get drafted. So he's probably looking at like an XFL or a USFL career.
Maybe CFL, but they just started too. So if he doesn't make it in the supplemental draft, it'll be next year when he's eligible for all these leagues because they've already started.
Yeah, the XFL just had their draft recently, right? I haven't seen the results of it, but I believe they just recently had it. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, it just seems weird, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, this late in the process, I think it's a little weird, right? Because just like we said, most of these leagues are either
play another year of college and then do it next season. Yeah,
exactly. So, but good luck to him. And then our other piece of news is San Diego State. The rumors were that they were going to leave the Mountain West and go to the Pac-12.
Well, I never saw officially that they said they're going to the Pac-12, but they did officially tell the Mountain West that they are resigning.
Well, that's some of the rumors, right? That's
right.
The Pac-12 is the leader in the clubhouse, if you will.
Oh yeah, I mean that's where they're going, I think.
Yeah. So, like you said, they officially told the Mountain West, we're done, we're out. So it'll be interesting. I think it's the Pac-12 too. I don't know why you would leave the Mountain West to either go laterally or down. So
it's definitely the Pac-12, right? And
so
now that they've announced
definitely Pac-12.
I can't see them getting offered to come back, right? If I'm the Mountain West, I'll be like, and let's say the Pac-12 says, "Oh, sorry, we don't want you now." I don't know that if I'm the Mountain West, am I going to open them back up with open arms, right? Knowing you were just trying to leave me? I personally wouldn't, but
no, I wouldn't either. But I don't think the Pac-12 is going to leave them hanging either because they need teams, right? I mean, you just lost UCLA and USC. You're in danger of possibly losing Oregon and Washington, maybe Utah, if you don't do something, and still may get. So I think, and San Diego State's pretty good at football, so that's helped. They're pretty good at basketball.
They're even better at basketball.
Team, so. Yeah. So, I mean, it's two of the major sports they're pretty good in, right? So they can help you with a draw. Geographically, it fits, right? They're still on the West Coast. I think that gets overlooked a lot of times.
It gets the Pac-12 back in Southern California.
Yes. And so I think it's a win for both, right? I mean, it gives the Pac-12 everything they want and need in a team and kind of helps replace UCLA or USC. It kind of fills the void. And at this stage, they're as good as anybody that you can find right now because all the good teams are gone. So,
and also, I think it's about Colorado, right? Colorado, going to the Big 12, back, leaving Pac-12.
Yeah, which would, if I'm not mistaken, no, they're in the Mountain West too. So that would re-up the conference rivalry of them and Colorado State, but Colorado State's in the Mountain West,
Mountain
right?
West.
Yeah, because they both used to be in the Pac-12 or whatever it was. So anyway, enough on that. But yeah, that's our only real news and notes. So we hadn't heard anything from the not transfer, but as far as conference realignment for a little while, it kind of died down a little bit. But this seems to be a move that's gaining speed and looks like it's going to happen. There's a team in Texas, and I want to say SMU, that is also looking to go to the Pac-12, I think, because I remember I read the piece that, this puts the Pac-12 back in Southern California. The Texas team, if it's SMU, I'm almost positive it is, would give them a foot back in Texas, which is a big market too for high school football, college football. So that would definitely help as well. I've not heard anything on SMU as of late. I know they were mentioned earlier a couple months ago, so I don't know if that's something that the Pac-12 is still trying to chase down or whatever. But there's plenty of time for that. Before we get to our main event here, thank a few sponsors. Trophy Smack, thank them because they support us a lot. They donate rings for our listener leagues. Nice, high-quality stuff. One that Justice is holding up right there. Comes in a nice little box. It's a good, heavy quality ring. It looks good, feels good, shines like $1 million. Yep, right there it is in its own little case that he's holding up. So we thank them. They've sponsored us for the last 2 or 3 years in our listener leagues. Whoever wins, they've been donating rings for them. Go check them out, though. They got so much more than rings, right? They've got
they got some awesome belts, like wrestling belts. Those things are badass.
Oh, those wrestling belts are awesome.
They are badass.
Oh my God, they're so awesome, and they're fully customizable too, right? Yeah, I mean, they've got templates where you can kind of go by, but you can upload your own artwork. So if you've got something that you've designed or something special that you want, you can upload it, and they can put that stuff in there. Follow them on social media. They're all the time doing something. Go check them out. And they've even, those belts now, I don't know if you saw this. Excuse me. They've got this little, it looks like a little plaque. And it's probably, 4x4. And you can screw that to, or mount it to the wall, bolt it to the wall. And you can take your belt and where the buttons are, you can snap your buttons of that belt onto that plaque, and it'll hold it on the wall.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And I know at one time, if you bought a belt, they were giving you that free. I know sometimes they give away rings. If you buy something, they'll give a ring away. So go check them out. They've got all kinds of things going. And again, we appreciate them for being such a loyal sponsor to us and helping us out with our winners, giving them something nice. So my fantasy league, you've heard us talk about this at length. Me, Justice, Chop, we feel they are the best, right? Even though we have to use
IDP, they absolutely are.
And college IDP. So, or not college IDP, because you have to use Fantrax for college IDP. Yeah, they are absolutely the best at it when it comes to IDP. Again, they sponsor us like Trophy Smack. They help us with our leagues, our listener leagues. So we want to thank them. Speaking of Fantrax, I got a follow for them yesterday.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they started following me a couple weeks ago. But yeah.
So maybe our bad talk about them pushed them into liking us. But no, I appreciate the follow, and they have gotten a little better. I think their layout for this year, as far as the design of the website, I like it. I thought it was a nice little upgrade.
I don't know.
Seemed a little more easier.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it, but it's better than what it was. I think.
I feel like it was designed for mobile things and not really for computer. But
true. So anyway, thank them for the follow. Maybe we'll say something kind here and there, but who knows? And then, of course, if you like to bet, go to Action 24/7. If you live in Tennessee, it's for Tennesseans by Tennesseans. I love this site. They did a little upgrade there on theirs now, and they've got a blue background, which kind of blends with the white now, so it's a little easier on the eyes, a little more easier to read. Same great interface, easy to find what you're looking for, easy to bet on what you want to find. Baseball, basketball, hockey, racing, ping pong, golf, darts, whatever. You name it, AAA baseball, you name it, they've got it. Their odds are just as good or better than the big boys. So go check them out. Use the promo code Hollywood100 for your first initial bet or deposit, and they will match whatever you deposit up to $400. So if you put in $400, they're going to give you $400. So anytime you use one of these sponsors, Trophy Smack, My Fantasy League, Action 24/7, not only you're supporting them, but you're kind of helping support us, right? We appreciate it. It's helping us grow, all that good stuff. So our 5-star topic.
I was gonna say, before you get to that, the best way to support us is to rate and review, wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe and like on YouTube. All those things are, that's the best way. Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. At Devy IDP Grind on Twitter. You can follow me at Hollywood Titan, Justice at Justin_2318. And again, YouTube, go subscribe, give us those likes, because that goes into their model. And the more of that stuff we get, the higher ranking we can get, the better stuff we can do. So we appreciate that, and it helps get the word out about us, right?
Absolutely,
we're new. We're doing well. I say we're new, but this is year 2 for us. We're into episode 67, so we're into year 2, and it's nobody else is really doing IDP Devy that I know of, and if they are, they're not doing it to the level that we are with podcasts and articles and all that stuff. So you might find some stuff here and there, but nobody's doing it like we're doing it, and hopefully we can keep the stranglehold on the market that way. I feel like we are the best, and we appreciate you guys for following us and listening to us and helping us spread the word. So appreciate you on that. 5-star topic. I'm getting tired of talking, so I'm going to let you lead. But we're going to do the SEC East. We've got a few players from each team. Maybe some guys that you should be looking at and why and all that good stuff. So we will jump right into it. looks like we've got the Florida Gators up. So, floor is yours, there, Mr. Justice.
All right. So, I mean, we've got a list of players here, but I'll try to highlight the ones I think are most important. And I think really for the Florida Gators, there's probably one player, and that's Shamar James. He was pretty sure he's a 5-star recruit. I feel like he was like number 2 or number 3 last year's cycle, maybe. I think Harold Perkins and C.J. Hicks might have been in front of him. So I guess that would have put him 3rd. But anyway, he was somewhere around there. And he did okay for a true freshman. He had 47 total tackles and 2 sacks. And so, for a true freshman, that's really good. But the 2 guys in front of him, I believe, are both gone. Ventrell Miller was drafted. And was Amari Burney drafted too? I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure so that they're both drafted. They're both gone. And so, the floor is his, so to speak, right? And
yeah, because they lost Rashad Torrance, they lost Trey Dean, they lost to Burney, they lost Miller, they lost Gervin Dexter, and that was their top 5 tacklers on the team. So
yeah,
a lot of share for somebody to take a hold of, right? So,
yeah,
I like Shamar James. I think it's a good opportunity for him this year.
And that's a good lead into probably what I feel is probably the second most important guy, and that's R.J. Moten, the safety who transferred over from Michigan, right? Like you said, Rashad Torrance and Trey Dean are both gone. So I have no doubt he's going to start. He's going to move into a starting role for them. So those are probably like 2 guys that probably should be rostered. Oh, Shamar James absolutely should be rostered in all leagues. Moten's someone that, I could see rostering. And then these next 2 guys I feel like are probably kind of like more probably watch list kind of guys. And that's cornerback Jason Marshall. He's getting a little bit of draft buzz, but he's a cornerback. And so unless you're like in a cornerback required league, you're not really probably rostering corners, and then
8 PBUs from him last year. That's pretty impressive.
But yeah, I mean, definitely if you're in a cornerback required league, he's someone you might want to look at. And then Prince, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Prince U. I think he's someone they've had high expectations for a while, but he's never really lived up to those expectations. So, he's more like a watch list kind of guy, I think.
Yeah, and he's going to be their probably leading pass rush. I mean, we talked about some of the guys that they lost.
Well, he probably was last year. He probably was supposed to be last year too, but
yeah, and he was actually the team leader in sacks with 4.5, and then he was the team leader in TFLs with 9.5. So they're definitely going to need him to step up this year in a big way. So I think you hit it with this list: Shamar James, Prince, Jason Marshall. I like. People keep asking me about. I'm trying to find his name here. Wingo.
Derek Wingo.
Derek Wingo. Yes. This is year 3 for him. So if you drafted him or got him in an auction, you probably spent a lot on him, right? I just don't know that it's going to happen for him. I'm kind of thinking this is somebody maybe you could cut. So, especially with all this new talent coming in. So, yeah, I like that one for the Gators. I think those are definitely the 3. Prince.
I feel like James and Moten are probably the big 2, right? Just because they lost both. They lost both starting linebackers. They lost both starting safeties, and those guys should step into those roles.
Yeah. Now, like I said, Wingo's going to get a shot because of the depth chart now, right? But I'm not expecting a whole lot. Somebody asked me about him the other day, and I just feel like he should have. If it was going to happen, it would have already happened with him, especially with Florida's kind of lack of a roster, right? because they don't really have the superstars. So, and now you've got these guys gone. So maybe this is his year, the third year, but it's not somebody I'm really holding my breath on. I'm kind of more in your realm with Prince and Jason and those guys, Shamar James, and then you got to start looking at some of these incoming freshmen. So yeah, like that on Florida. Up next, you've got Georgia.
Yep. Up next, Georgia Bulldogs, and as always, there's really no shortage of talent on the defensive side for Georgia. Defensive end, Michael Williams, I love. If he's not rostered, he absolutely should be rostered. He's
Yes.
I think he's gonna be a star, and he's gonna prove it this year. Along that defensive front, you got Malachi Starks at safety. So both Williams and Starks were true freshmen last year, and Starks is kind of that next stud defensive back for Georgia. Christopher Smith's gone. We have Tyke Smith here, who does return, right? And it's kind of interesting on Tyke Smith. He's listed as a defensive back, and he's always been a safety, right? But for some reason, Phil still listed him at linebacker, which just kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if they're expecting him to kind of play a hybrid role, defensive back and safety, or what? I've never viewed him in like that as that type of player. But I just something to note that I thought was kind of odd. And then at linebacker, you got Jamon Dumas-Johnson, who was a starter last year, returns with 70 tackles, and then Small Munden Jr., who was their leading tackler last year with 76 tackles. And I feel like all of those guys, maybe with the exception of maybe Tyke Smith, but Michael Williams, Malachi Starks, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, and Small Munden, they should all be rostered in your leagues.
Right. So, yeah, great list. You talking about Michael Williams, right? Think about what Georgia's had the last 2 years defensively as a whole. And last year, Michael Williams still got 6.5 TFLs and 4.5 sacks. So some of those guys are gone now. He's going to be one of the next guys up, I feel like. So
and Nolan Smith's
I really
gone.
like him.
So
N'Kobe Dean's gone now. So you're moving some pieces. Robert Beal's gone. Some of those guys are gone. I really like Small London. He had 8 TFLs last year, which was right near the top for the team lead. And then Jamon Dumas-Johnson had 9. So, and I think he was the team leader with 9. So, plus he had 4 sacks, 3 PBUs. I think I like Jamon Dumas-Johnson a little better than Small London, just personally, but I like them both. I was listening to some local radio around Georgia, and the word is they really like this Starks kid, Malachi Starks. They got him listed as safety, but they think he can play some corner. They think he can kind of be the Keely Ringo of that defense, that he can kind of do a little bit of everything. So I like that. Tyke Smith, I don't know. He didn't do a lot last year, which it's hard to do a lot when you're on a loaded team, right? 28 tackles, 2.5 for a loss, 2 sacks. Maybe with some of those guys gone now, like we talked about, maybe he gets an opportunity to really show what he can do. But I think they're going to have to, right? And that's the thing with Georgia and the Alabamas and these schools like this. When you're that loaded and you don't really do anything your first couple of years, right? Because you're so loaded on that team, when it comes your turn, you really better step up and produce right away, because they've got 2 and 3 recruiting classes behind you that's just as good or better. So, and they're not afraid to start youngsters. So, I think this is an important year for some of these guys, but they really do like Malachi Starks, which is intriguing. So if you could play him, let's say at corner, and he's being a safety, it's a little bit of a cheat code for you. So, and I think Georgia has some of these players that kind of move around, right, a little bit. So, yeah, good list. Um, Up next is the Wildcats from Kentucky.
Yeah, so we got two guys listed here. The first one, he's really only, I think, valuable if you're in a defensive tackle required league, and that's Deion Walker. He was pretty sure he was a true freshman last year. He is a mountain of a man. Like he is large. I don't know his measurements, but he's huge, man. Like I'm pretty sure, like if I recall correctly, like against Florida last year, there was a picture of him grabbing some running back, and like the running back looked like a kid compared to him, man. Like he's a monster and a mountain of a man. And he played, as a true freshman last year. He played really well for the Wildcats. He had 40 total tackles. He had 1 sack. Not sure how many. I don't see how many TFLs he had, but yeah, I mean, in a defensive tackle league, he's definitely someone that should be rostered. And then linebacker or edge, J.J. Weaver. And I feel like this has got to be like his last year. It seems like he's been around forever. And I feel like he's a guy, again, that's also never lived up to his potential or hype, so to speak. He was supposed to be there. I feel like last year they expected him to kind of be their next kind of great edge rusher, and it never really panned out that way. I mean, he did lead them in sacks, but he only had 3. So, but on the flip side, he did have 47 tackles, which is nice for a defensive lineman. So, he might be someone you want to put on a watch list, kind of see how he's doing in the first few weeks, and add him. But yeah, that's all I got for Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky's kind of thin. As far as IDP options, we can kind of dig deep if we need to and look at some of these other guys, but they've lost a lot of talent over the last few years. So this is really their main 2. And you're right, Deion Walker is a monster, 6'6", 348 on the current spring website for Kentucky. So he's a big dude. And like you said, if you're playing in defensive tackle leagues, he's probably worth looking at, really. He is just a monster. 4.5 TFLs last year, so with 40 tackles. So I expect those numbers to go up a little bit. J.J. Weaver, you're right. It does seem like he's been around for freaking ever, right?
Yeah.
Kind of taking over for Josh Paschal, who left a few years ago. And again, I'm with you. Doesn't quite seem like he's ever reached his full potential. And I think they're going to need him. I know they lost Will Levis, but they got
Devin Leary.
Not Dennis Leary. David Leary from NC State, so that'll help. But
and the funny thing, I just looked. J.J. Weaver's only a junior, so he's still got another year. Even though this will technically be his 5th year, but he redshirted his freshman year. Then he has the COVID year in 2020, so he still technically got 2 years left.
Actually, 21 was his better season because he had 10.5 TFLs and 6.5 sacks, 2 interceptions. Kind of dropped off a little bit last year, but I think they used him in a little less as a pass rusher, right? They were using him more as a linebacker type player. But he's a player that kind of fills the box score, right? He does a little bit of everything: tackles, TFLs, sacks. He can get you interceptions. He can get you PBUs. Got a pretty good nose for finding the football, right? 2 forced fumbles and 3 recoveries last year. So I like that for sure. When my dog's going crazy, I'm going to kill him every time. Up next is Missouri.
Yeah, again, not a lot of I think these 2 guys are both probably watch list kind of guys. The first is cornerback Chris Abrams-Drain. He's someone I think is getting a little bit of draft buzz, but if you're not in a cornerback required league, he's not going to be someone you're interested in. Last year he had 48 total tackles. He did have 14 pass breakups. So obviously, if you're in a cornerback required league, he's someone I'd be interested in with those 14 pass breakups. And then linebacker Terine Hopper, who I think people had higher expectations for. Last season, he was their second leading tackler. He had, I think people thought maybe he was going to produce like a Nick Bolton, but, that clearly is not the case. But he did have 74 tackles and 3 sacks last year. So he's someone I might try and keep an eye on in the first few games of the season. And the same with along their defensive line. So they lost both starting edges. Isaiah McGuire got drafted, and then Jeff Coat transferred, I want to say, to Arkansas. And so, McGuire led them last year with 7 sacks. I have zero clue who's going to kind of step up along that defensive line. So that's kind of a situation to maybe monitor the first couple weeks of the year.
Yeah, they've definitely got some talent deficiencies right on defense. Hopper, like you said, 77 tackles last year, had 13 and a half TFLs. So, he was making some plays behind the line of scrimmage. Got the interception for PBUs. I like Chad Bailey a little bit too. If you're really looking, this is his last year, I believe. He was third on the team last year with 57 tackles. Had 8.5 for a loss, 3 PBUs. Up front, as far as their defensive line goes, I'm with you. I don't really know who they have stepping up to fill some of those roles. And losing Isaiah McGuire is going to be a huge blow to them. They're going to miss him a ton. And trying to step in and fill his shoes
too, right? Like that just doesn't help.
Right.
Not that Jeff Coat was super productive, but obviously he was somewhat decent because he got he transferred to Arkansas. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else really you can look at. They're going to have to find somebody to fill those spots. I kind of like Enos Rakestraw Jr. too, though. 35 tackles last year, 4.5 for a loss, interception, 12 PBUs, 2 forced fumbles. He seemed to do a lot for them. He's 6 foot 170, so he's got to add on some weight, but really athletic, does a good job for them. If they struggle to get any kind of interior rush, right? We just talked about their defensive line. If they struggle with that, that secondary is going to be leaned on a lot, and those linebackers. So I can see his numbers going up. And so if you're playing in leagues like we talk about all the time, position specific, where you're having to start corners, I kind of like him. He's a guy that I kind of target, that you could probably pick up for cheap off waivers, probably not going to cost you nothing. So, we will move on to South Carolina, the Gamecocks, who I hate. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
So the first guy here, this is actually his 7th year in college. He petitioned the NCAA because I guess he missed. He had 2 years where he didn't get to play because he got injured very early. So he did petition the NCAA, and they did grant him a 7th year of eligibility. Is Jordan Strachan. And he's someone that he transferred in from Georgia State, right? And he was like super productive at Georgia State. Like, I don't know off the top of my head, but I feel like double-digit sacks, decent tackler. But since he's got to South Carolina, he has absolutely done nothing. Last year he had 10 total tackles, 3 TFLs, and 1 sack. 2021 he had 22 tackles, 6 TFLs, 3 sacks. And just
he's. I had wrote up a piece on him. 2000? Help me, Justice. 2020, I believe it was his last year at Georgia State.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was a stud, right? 41 tackles, 14 for a loss, 9.5 sacks. Had 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and I wrote it up then. If you're in deep leagues like we are, man, he's a stud. You need to have him on your fantasy team. Then he transfers to South Carolina, and at the time I was like, it's kind of a step up, right? You're going from Georgia State to SEC football, even if it is South Carolina or some of these bottom teams, that's still quite the step up.
Yeah.
And I was like, if he can just give you 3/4 of what he got you there, I think most people would take that, right? But he's not even giving you 3/4 of that. I mean, he's had in 2 years 33 tackles, which is 8 less than he had that year. 9 TFLs. He had 14 that 1 year, and he's had 4 sacks, and he was coming off a 9.5 sack season. Like you said, he's kind of just shit the bed, right? I mean, he's not lived up to the hype, and to only have 10 tackles last year, and I don't know, he only played 2 games, so I don't know if he was hurt or just really fell down the depth chart or whatever. But they could definitely use him, that's for sure.
Yes, because they lost Zach Pickens. Jordan Birch transferred. I believe Jordan Birch, did he end up at Colorado maybe? Does that sound right?
I think so. That does sound right. He was their third leading tackler,
So yeah, they need Mr. Strachan to step up for sure. Now the next 2 guys on this list I really like. They're both safeties, defensive backs. They were both freshmen last year, and they both I'm pretty sure were on several freshman All-American teams. The first is Nick Amanawari. He led the team in tackles last year with 85, 1 pass breakup, and 1 fumble recovery. And then DQ Smith, who was 4th in tackles at 54. He had 1 sack, 6 pass defended, and 2 interceptions. I haven't watched specifically them in South Carolina games, but my guess is Amanawari is probably playing, the strong safety, and DQ's probably playing more of a free safety type role or slot corner role, something like that, maybe. Yeah. But
you're forgetting they lost Cam Smith this year too, their corner. So these 2 safeties.
They lost Darius Rush too, so they lost both their starting corners.
Boom, baby.
Rush got drafted. Cam Smith got drafted a little bit earlier than Rush, but they were both drafted fairly early. So yeah, both of these guys, if
sorry
they're
for the outburst, my balls just hit a 3-run shot here. My bad.
if Amanawari or DQ Smith, either one of them are on waivers, definitely they should be owned in leagues for sure.
Especially Amanawari, because like you said, they've lost quite a bit. And he was their leading tackler last year, so I would expect that to be the case again this year probably. He had 85 last year, so if he's on waivers or something like that, I'd definitely take a shot on him.
All right. Next up,
Tennessee Balls are next.
I was gonna say, you want to lead us off? It's your team, man.
Sure, why not? I feel like there's a lot that you could put on this list, but I feel like there's a lot for a lot of teams you could be, right? Because not everybody's
question marks, I think, for Tennessee, right? And so,
yeah. Well, they lost Byron Young. to the draft. So now their leading pass rusher is Tyler Barron. So they're going to need him,
They lost
which I think
Jeremy
he's going to
Banks.
be able to hold his own. Yeah, they lost Jeremy Banks. They lost Alontae Taylor a couple of years ago. They've lost some pieces. They lost, which he transferred a few years ago,
Juju Mitchell.
but the depth.
They lost
Juwan
Juju Mitchell
So
transferred
the depth, yeah. So the depth hasn't quite been there, right? And I think that's what they're finally getting back to in Tennessee is building up the depth behind the starters and letting them grow. So Aaron Beasley's going to be by far your IDP one for Tennessee. He's probably going to rack up a ton of tackles. They got a transfer from, I believe it was BYU, Keenan Peely, who's going to be really valuable. Stepping in and playing next to Beasley. I think those two are going to be your leading tackle getters, right? They're just going to do so much for you on that defense, and it's much needed. Now, I will say, and I added his name here, incoming freshman Arian Carter. If you're willing to wait just a little bit and play the long game, I think he's going to be the guy you want, right? Because Beasley's probably going to be gone next year. Peely, I don't know what he's got left eligibility-wise right off, but he could be gone. And I think Carter, if he's as good as what's billed, I think he could step in this year and give them some much-needed reps, right? At least as a backup. So I think that's good for him being young and getting those opportunities. Now, they do have Roman Harrison who's there, but he'll be gone after this year. So, like I said, if you can kind of wait a little bit, be patient, and play the long game, I think Carter is definitely somebody you want on your list. Of course, if we could have got Sammy Brown, then, this is a whole different story. Thank you, Clemson, shithead. But, yeah, I think he's the leader in the clubhouse. And there's a lot of younger guys that really you just have to kind of wait and see this year, I think, is the thing. Because all these players are starting to move on now, and these young guys from the past 2 years are starting to come in and take over. So I think the four we have listed here, Tyler Barron, Aaron Beasley, Keenan Peely, and Arian Carter, I think those are your four main ones. I would look at if you're looking at secondary, I would just wait for the first couple games of the season and see who they have starting and see what they're doing with them because they have a lot of young pieces. I will tell you this. If you play in a fantasy league college side and you get rewarded for return yards, cornerback D. Williams is somebody you want on your roster. He's probably going to start some games this year, probably more than I'm thinking. The kid in the open field is electric, and he is fast as hell. So, especially on punt returns, he just kind of has. Watch him play. He just kind of has a knack for when that ball hits his hands, it's turbo time. He hits the gas and he's gone. So, if you get those return yard points, he's definitely somebody I would kind of look at. You had nobody for this next team, so I added a few. Vanderbilt.
Before we get to them, I was going to say, just my thoughts on Tennessee. The one guy I think that I'm most interested in is Aaron Beasley. Right? He
right.
He
for this year definitely.
He had a great start to last year. Right? He did lead him in tackles, but he kind of fell off. I think as the season went on. Right? But with Banks gone now.
He was banged up a little bit towards the end. His numbers were kind of down from a tackle standpoint from the year before. As a junior, he had 84. Last year, he had 76. So it's pretty close. But his play behind the line of scrimmage went up, right? So he went from 7.5 in TFLs and 1.5 sacks to 13 TFLs and 3 sacks. Plus, he added the 3 PBUs.
I feel like just looking at stats, the first 5 weeks he was, 8 tackles, 14 tackles, 4 tackles, 9 tackles, and then he just kind of fell off. 2 tackles, 5 tackles, 4 tackles.
Now he did show up against Clemson,
right? And then he shows up again at the end.
He did resurface against Clemson. Yeah.
Did Did Banks
I think
play?
he was the defensive player of the game in that, if I'm not mistaken. Because he had 12 tackles, 10 solos, 4 for a loss, 2 sacks, and a PBU because he dominated that game against Clemson.
Yeah, I'm looking right now to see if did Banks play in that game.
Banks did not play in that game. If you will remember,
yeah, so there you go, right? Like
quit playing in the South Carolina game. Remember that was the big blow up. Where's Jeremy Banks? He's not, which kind of hurt us, right? Because that was the first true adjustment for Tennessee's defense, right? Because you'd had Banks and Beasley out there the whole time, and then you roll into Columbia, and Banks is not there. And honestly, I still haven't found out why or what happened that he wasn't on the field. And
I can tell you what I
at
heard.
The combine, he kind of even at the combine when they asked him, he's kind of like just brushed it off, right? He's like, I think the Vols coaching staff and this, that, and the other. It was a shame that I wasn't on the field, but he didn't really allude to what it was either. So I don't know what you've heard.
He got into it with Hendon Hooker and made some pretty shitty comments.
Oh, wow.
Something to that effect.
Wow. Which doesn't surprise me because he's had his issues before, right? He was suspended from the team once before. So a former running back,
and so that's
a really
why,
good player. I don't think
that's why he didn't play against South Carolina. He was suspended for that game.
Yeah, he was suspended, and I don't think he didn't play against Vanderbilt or Clemson either, and that was the last 3 games. So good player. I don't think he's a great player. But back to the college side, I think that's definitely going to help Peely, right? Because I think there's a good spot for Peely to come in there beside Beasley and be that strong number 2. And Peely's not a horrible player, right? I think he's, even at BYU, he was a strong number 2. Now, if you put him in a number 1 role, I don't know that he can do that. But as a number 2, I like him.
Yeah, I think he can be, a good second linebacker for them for sure. At least I think he at least put up stats for IDP purposes.
Yeah, and we've got a few minutes here. Because I was looking at with Peely. If this screen will load. So 6'3", 233, really good size, right? I mean, that's great size for a linebacker. That's what you're wanting. He's played 4 years at BYU. And has quietly come on every year. Now, freshman, 26 tackles, 1.5, 1 sack, 1.5 tackles for loss. As a sophomore, so far his best year to date. 72 tackles, 4.5 for a loss. Then 2021, he only played 3 games. So I'm thinking he was injured that year, if I remember correctly. But in 3 games, he had 31 tackles, 3.5 for a loss, and 1.5 sacks. So he was on his way that year to having a huge season, a monster season. I mean, 10 tackles a game at that point. That's pretty impressive. And then last year, he had 62 tackles, 4 for a loss, and 1 sack. So I like him, like I said, as that number 2. He's experienced, right? 34 career games, has shown that he can produce. And I think, like I said, as the number 2 guy next to Beasley, it doesn't all fall on his shoulders, right? He can just kind of come in and support him. So, and I think in SEC with Tennessee, with the way some of these teams are playing, I think he could have a big year, him and Beasley both. I think Tennessee's defense can support 2 IDP players. And it kind of has, right? Because you've had Beasley and Banks, you had Beasley or Banks and To'o, and you've had Batuli and To'o. Over the years, Tennessee's always had 2 good linebackers, and for fantasy purposes, they've been pretty well good players. So, like I said, I can kind of see him having a good year there. Good list on these, man. Our last one's Vanderbilt. You absolutely had jack shit down.
I don't.
It was almost like he was refusing to recognize them as a legit College 1 team or Division 1 team. I was like, what the heck?
Anthony Orgy's gone, right? And so he was really the only. He was the only guy I was ever interested in from a IDP perspective, and he's gone now. So Who the next
Right.
orgy
And I
is?
felt sorry
I
for him.
have zero idea.
So I felt sorry for him because you had, like I said, nobody listed.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked at some of the spring game and some of the local reporting, watched a few videos from last year on some of these games from last year, clips of it. Damn it, I hate LSU bastards. Anyway, so I've got a few names here that are players that have stood out since the spring game, the spring practices, that's probably worth keeping an eye on. And the one I really want to mention is DeRicky Wright. He's a safety. Multiple position on Fantrax. He's listed as everything: linebacker, corner, safety. You know, that's kind of the cheat code, right, Justice? We've talked about this. Seems like every week we kind of talk about some of this stuff.
Most of he's playing like
he was a yeah, and apparently he was a standout at the Vanderbilt spring game. So, and they like what he's done this offseason. So he's if I'm looking at somebody, he's probably the one that I would look at just because of the position, multiple position versatility that he has. A few other names, and this is strictly coming from some reports and the spring game that I watched. Linebacker C.J. Taylor, linebacker Bryce Cowan, a redshirt freshman, linebacker Ethan Crisp, a freshman, and safety Savion Riley, a redshirt freshman. They all had 6 tackles in the spring game, each one of them, all 4 of them. So I know that didn't narrow it down any, but I feel like those are the 4. I think it's going to be Taylor, Cowan, and Crisp is probably what Vanderbilt's going to roll out there at linebacker. Crisp being a freshman, you know, we still got to see. Maybe they got a veteran that they feel a little better with, but I think he's definitely got a shot. And then I think it's going to be Riley and Wright as the 2 safeties. My guess is, looking at what they did in the spring game, Wright is going to play safety, but he's going to play down in the box a lot, especially when teams want to load up and run against him or run against them, and they are. They're going to wear Vanderbilt down, and then they're going to start pounding the rock. I can see him playing a lot down in the box, and that's kind of what they showed in the spring game, right? He was kind of down there quite a bit. I know they didn't give everything away, but he was down there quite a bit in the spring game. So if you're picking one, I think he's the guy that you would you want to look at.
And I don't know anything about any of these guys, but my assumption is they're all kind of like watch list guys, right? I'm not going to go around probably rostering any of these guys. It's going to be, you know, see how week 1 and week 2 kind of plays out and go from there, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's the same with a lot of teams, right? I mean, some of these positions you kind of have to wait because they're going to play these cupcakes early in the year a lot of times. So you kind of get to see, you know, when you're playing the Akrons of the world, you kind of get to see, because they're going to run out there and they're going to run out multiple players at multiple positions, trying to see who's going to stick before they get into conference play. So, yeah, I think those first few games from them will be telling. You'll see who starts to stand out.
Yep.
So that does it for
SEC East.
The SEC East. I almost forgot what we were doing. Sorry. Next week we are going to do the SEC West. That's going to be a fun one, I think.
Yeah, probably just in a couple of days, I guess. We haven't really talked about when we're going to
So
record.
I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Oh, sorry. I'm interested in your thoughts. My phone's just a little delayed tonight. What are your thoughts on the SEC going to this 1 year, no division stuff? So there's no East and West technically. It's a full 16, 18 battle it out. Top 2 teams go to the championship. Do you like that style, or do you prefer the actual division?
I think I prefer divisions, just because I think it helps promote and generate rivalries, right? But the flip side of no divisions is, maybe the guys in the East are going to play Alabama more often than they would. I mean, I don't really know, but maybe but I
well,
just
they
feel
tried
like
their best to keep the natural rivalries, is what they
the
quote
natural
unquote
ones,
said.
yeah.
So
But you're always you always lose some in that process, right? Because you just can't accommodate them all.
true. Plus, you've got Oklahoma and Texas coming in the following year, right? So I'm with you. I like the division, right? I like the division things. But I can see from an overall standpoint, going to no division, just doing the one thing, you're really getting your best two teams into the conference championship. Not that the SEC's really had a problem with that, but I think that kind of eliminates any doubt, right? Two best records battle it out.
Right. I think that that's kind of where this decision lies, right? Is in the expansion of the playoffs. And so I feel like, they want as many teams as possible. And I think this getting rid of division was done specifically to give them a better chance, I think, because in their minds is why they did it. Better chance of getting more teams in the playoffs.
Do you see other conferences, Big Ten looking at you, ACC, if you can hold it together, even some of the smaller ones like the Sun Belt and even the small ones, Mountain West and the Pac-12.
Well, ACC already did it.
Them following?
ACC already did it. ACC did it before SEC. ACC did it a while ago. I want to say they announced it
right. So do you
feel like they announced it last season?
So do you see the rest of these conferences following suit with that process?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Big 12 does the Big 12 announce what they're going to do, right? I don't know, but if they haven't,
not that I'm aware of.
I'm sorry, the Big 10 with USC and UCLA coming on, I certainly expect that they will 1,000% go to no divisions. That's what I think.
I think so too with these super conferences. That's kind of where you have to go, right? A little bit. I mean,
now
it's
Big
one thing
to
have 10, 12, 14 conferences, but now you're getting into, with these super conferences, 16, 18, looking at 20. I mean, let's face it, nobody's expecting Vanderbilt and Missouris of the world or the Dukes of the world or the Rutgers of the world or whoever to be in the college football playoff, right? They would have to have excellent seasons. Everything would have to go right. Not saying it can't happen, but the odds are whatever. So I'm with you. I think these conferences do this, and it puts them in a position to put their best teams, whether it's 1, 2, 4, or 6. They are positioning themselves to put their best teams in position for that playoff change that's coming, which I love. I love this. I love the new playoff system.
Right. I think in the case of the Big Ten, it helps them, I think, even more than the SEC to do it, right? So, now they have the opportunity to have Michigan and Ohio State twice, right? If they were to do it, they could play twice in a year.
Oh God, yeah. I see what you're saying. Same with SEC, Alabama, and Georgia, right?
They're going to keep that rivalry, right? So they're going to play in the regular season, and then good chance they both end up in the championship game. So,
well, there's a potential with the new playoff coming. They could see it 3 times. Think about it. Play in the season, you play in the conference championship, and then you get in this new playoff format. If you're lucky enough, you can see it a 3rd time. And why is that important? Because it's the same reason that drives college football. Money. Yeah. It's the best teams that everybody wants to see. They want to see the rivalries. Those games, for the most part, despite who wins, for the most part, are pretty good games, right? They're exciting. Even in some of the more larger blowout wins, for a few minutes, they're still exciting and whatever. So, yeah, good stuff, man. any other players you want to mention that maybe we missed, or any news that maybe you just thought of? Because I looked for some news and there wasn't a whole lot out there.
Nothing. Nothing comes to mind.
Well, on that note, don't forget to go to YouTube, subscribe, give us a like, right? Help us grow. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, which is Apple, Spotify, Google, iTunes. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio. I've got a set up over there now. They're supporting our feed. If you're like me, you're a big Spotify guy, so that's where I listen to mostly everything. But my local radio, I like to listen to iHeartRadio when I'm listening to that. But anyway, wherever you listen to your podcast, go like us, help us, and subscribe, help us grow. Excuse me. Follow us at Devy IDP Grind on Twitter. You can follow Justice at Justice_2318. And you can follow me at Hollywood Titan. Don't forget, if you're listening to this podcast and clearly you're into IDP Devy or at least college football, go check out our Patreon. For those of you that know me pretty well, I do a lot of writing for the NFL IDP Nation, but I do a lot of my Devy stuff on the Patreon. I've got rankings that Justice has been kind enough to help me format and improve the outlook and make it a little easier for me to use, because I was doing it the long way around. But much shout out to him for his work on that. But there's over 200, I think it's 220 now, IDPs I've got added. And I'll probably be adding some more as we do these shows and watch some tape getting ready for the college season. So go check that out. But I've got rankings, I've got articles, I've even got stuff on high school. So go check that out, which is pretty hard to do. Justice has dropped an article or two over there. Hopefully we can get him to do some more for us. Quit being so selfish. Spread the knowledge that he has. But yeah, go check that out. A lot of good stuff over there. We thank you for listening. We thank you for supporting. Go check out our sponsors, My Fantasy League, Action 24/7, Trophy Smack. And we will be back next week with the SEC West. Until then,
subscribe,
good luck in
rate,
your drafts,
review.
your auctions. Yep, rate, review, and subscribe. Help us grow so we can do more things. We will be back next week with the SEC West. Until then, we will see you next week.